I wanted to talk about the news today. There's some very exciting news out there, and this is the main one. Krebs on Security has an excellent article about surveillance by mobile ad data. It turned out in New Jersey, somebody got mad at a police officer and they managed to get their home address and they went there and killed their kid. So they passed a law in New Jersey that police officers should be allowed to have their location data removed from any online database. And based on that law, they're suing all the data providers that are failing to provide that service. And it turns out that the situation is much worse than I ever thought it was. There's a service called Babel Street that will let you get a 2-week free trial of their data, and they supposedly only send to tells you government and law enforcement, but in fact all you have to do is tell them you're thinking of writing a government contract sometime in the future and they'll just let you have it. So an investigator did this, and with the Babel Street they give you a map of the world on your computer and you can just draw a shape around any area and it will give you a historical record of all the phones entering and leaving that area. So you can, this is around a mosque, showing all the people that went to a mosque. They were able to put it around an abortion clinic, and they were able to put it around police stations. And it has another option called Night View that will tell you where does the phone go at night and just sit there for many hours. So that's where people sleep. So they were able to identify police officers and track them, proving that their data has not been removed from the database. And anybody can do this. You can track who's doing anything. You can identify people, find out where they live. And so the interesting question is, how do they have this data? So one of the officers checked, and only his wife had an app on her phone. Macy's was the only app that was doing location tracking. So they thought it really shouldn't be getting all that much location information. And they found out it's not the apps themselves necessarily. It's just every web page that has an ad. It turns out if you load a web page on your phone, when the web page loads, it has an area for an ad, and what it does is it sends bid requests out to thousands of people. The bid request says, this person is viewing a web page. Here is a summary of their history, their physical location, the other web pages they've been to, all the kinds of information. Here is a profile of that person. That is sent directly to thousands of ad distributors, and they then bid in real time. For a price to deliver an ad to you. Somebody wins the bid and you see that ad. But all those people got information about your physical location and a bunch of other information about you every time you viewed a web page. And that is probably why they have enormously accurate information of where everybody is essentially all the time. It turns out that they're able to accurately locate 80% of Android phones, but only 25% of iPhones. And that's because Apple recently blocked this. This is called Mobile Advertising ID, this identifier of your phone. And Apple recently made that opt-in instead of opt-out. So it's not on by default. So only 25% of Apples are participating in this system, but almost all Androids. And if you want to turn it off on your phone, there are instructions at the bottom here how to turn it off for Apple and for iOS in your settings. So it's, I think it's a very interesting article, very important. Let me check for comments in the Twitch. Find it, here we are. Yep, yeah, it's on Android and iOS, and it's more serious on Android. So RISC-V is the new processing architecture coming out for processors, a competitor with ARM. It's open source and not encumbered by patents and royalty payments like ARM is, and a lot of Chinese companies are already making it. And there's a security architecture they add to it called Cherry, which is now being made easier to use. And I looked up what Cherry is. This is an attempt to patch the memory corruption flaws caused by C and C++. You add enhancements to the language, and it it uses these, it apparently has also got something to do with the hardware. So the hardware is made compatible with it, and if you use the right development kit and the right particular extensions to C and C++, it will supposedly fix some security problems. So it'll be interesting to see how well this is succeeds in the marketplace. Right now, it hardly matters because there's almost no RISC devices for sale, but they may be coming. It will just depend, I think, on how much ARM charges for licensing, because RISC and ARM have essentially equal utility. It's just that ARM is proprietary and you have to pay for it, and RISC is open source. You don't have to pay for it. And so if ARM sells its product at too high a price, then I think RISC will become more popular. Anyway, let me get back to the comments. Okay, no new comments. All right. So I've heard this for years. Apparently it's big in Britain now. More and more evidence shows that smartphones and social networking are very bad for children. They really shouldn't have them until they're older, like 16. And so, but parents want to be able to call their kid to like see where they are, and so a kid can call them in an emergency. So one option is to get an old feature phone that just makes phone calls and nothing else. Doesn't have any of these modern features like social networking. So people are doing that in Britain, and we'll see. It may possibly become more popular. I don't think it'll become popular to any large extent in America unless there's a government mandate forcing parents to do it, and I don't think that was likely to pass. WhatsApp has added encryption to your contact databases tied to your identity, not to your phone, which solves a problem that people have trouble transmitting their WhatsApp contact list to another phone when they get a new phone, or if they lose their phone. So they have a new system which depends upon hardware security modules at the server to keep everything encrypted. So they say everything about your contacts will be encrypted on the server, and they don't have the key. So Meta, that runs the servers, can't leak or lose your data, but they do have it stored in a way where you can put it on a new phone. So it sounds pretty good. So in Europe, there are strong privacy laws, and in particular, they're violated by European companies using American companies like Microsoft and Google, because in America, foreigners do not have any privacy rights. Citizens have very little privacy rights too, but foreigners have none at all, and it is a violation of European privacy for them to send data to America to be processed. So, in order to avoid that, there's been a safe harbor, and now there's a new version of the same thing, a special law in Europe, just so European companies can use American resources, even though there's some kind of exception made to the privacy law. And now there's going to be some similar problem between the UK and Europe. Now that UK did Brexit and withdrew from Europe, they're trying to make a custom privacy law in the UK, which would make it difficult for data to transfer between the UK and Europe. So it's another version of the same problem, but different privacy laws in different nations. It becomes legally problematic for a company in one location to use a service in another location, and what everybody needs in Europe is they need to use American companies because Americans have such powerful, cheap services, and there are not analogous services available within the European Union. So they're trying to constantly find some way to overcome the legal obstacles. So Windows 11, as I'm sure you know, will not install on most Windows 10 machines. Microsoft requires a Trusted Platform Module version 2, and usually will fail the test. There have been various hacks and workarounds, and here's a new one that just came out, a new way to do it called Rufus. And what this tool does is it runs the installer using the Windows Server version of the installer instead of the Windows Client version of the installer. That seems to be the latest workaround that works. There have been a series of these ways to trick Windows 11 into going on a machine with older hardware. We'll see how well it works, but there's a variety of ways to do it, but Microsoft tends to patch them so they don't work anymore. We check for comments in the Twitch. Can Facebook still access or sell your WhatsApp data? Supposedly not. That's the idea. Supposedly Facebook does not know what you're doing on WhatsApp, and therefore they can't sell it, they can't leak it. That's the claim. It's all encrypted. To have anything to do with, yes, and like I say, a risk, as far as I can tell, RISC pretty much duplicates the functionality of ARM, but it does it in an open source way. I've written some projects where you hack into RISC-based machines. We run emulators, and the process for hacking in and the things you can do are almost identical to ARM processors. All right. So anyway, here's another one that I thought was pretty interesting. They want to extract electric power from the ocean. And the way they're doing it, now I knew there were windmills, and I knew there were wave power stations where the motion of the waves is transmitted, but it turns out that those are very inefficient. But what's much more effective is a temperature gradient. But what you need to do is you need to find a place where the surface water is 20 degrees centigrade hotter than the water down deep. And they found this in Hawaii. So they say this thermal energy conversion from the ocean is going to be very powerful, very effective at producing a lot of electricity. It'll take the heat difference and use that to run some kind of engine that generates electricity. So we'll see what happens. I wonder if it fouls up the heat in the ocean. Anyway, they are building apparently this stuff in Hawaii, and it may be a way to generate renewable electricity. Although I bet there'll be some consequences for marine life. And Arkansas apparently has enough lithium for all the words EVs, but it is in the form of lithium dissolved in water, and they're trying to develop an efficient process to extract the lithium from the water. Apparently the current technique is to make a pool and let the pool evaporate to get lithium out of it, but they're trying to find a faster, more efficient way. But apparently there is so much lithium there that we really don't need to be importing lithium from other nations, which is something we'd rather not do. I've heard that the lithium mining is actually pretty nasty in other nations and doing a lot of harm to either the people or the environment there. And, of course, if you import it from a hostile nation like China, they could cut it off, and are likely to, considering the bad relations between the countries. And so you'd rather have an internal source in your nation. And apparently we do have enough lithium in America to supply all our needs if we improve our methods of mining for it. So anyway,